driving, start looking up in the sky and you'll start seeing white lines going across the sky.
I've heard enough. Thank you.
But that shit is like 100% like aluminum foil hat kind of.
Oh,
I mean, like
it's
just
nuts.
very,
It's
very,
fucking
very
nuts. My favorite part, honestly, though, was when Candace Newell, when Rep Coates is like, when you look up in the sky, and Candace Newell's like,
Oh
Okay,
my
so
God.
let me a public service announcement.
Please.
Welcome to Seriously, the podcast that dives into the baffling.
We can't send them to a prison where there's animals, where there's livestock.
The ridiculous.
Like omelets better than sex.
And downright unbelievable political climate in red states like Louisiana.
So we can't go there. There's no vegan jail.
Seriously. Seriously.
Welcome to Seriously. We are your dynamic duo. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Ellie.
And today we are coming back to talk about the Sue Everyone bill and the bill that criminalizes STDs.
It was back this week. Yay.
Before we get started, Ellie, what was your Seriously moment this week?
So I have not been able to watch any of the news or anything that's like outside of basically like the legislature or my house or car this past week. So I don't really know what's going on in the real world. But my Seriously is, so it's about the legislature, of course, and the way that they like sort of generally operate. And, you know, you will know this well, but I've been thinking about like the way that they act with passing laws around there is like basically if you were like when you were a kid and like you had like a clubhouse, this would be like a real dystopian clubhouse, obviously, but like where it's like, what should we make the laws? What do you think we should make the laws? We can make them anything we want. Mm-hmm. Like the rules here are, we make the rules. And then when people say to them, people like me, you know, or other people in other contexts, like, hey, no, I mean, you can't make that law or you can't do it that way because like we have other laws that say you can't do that, or this is going to conflict with other things in ways that are going to be hugely problematic. And they're like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, we make the laws. We make the laws. And it's just like so incredibly it's not just frustrating. It's like they kind of do act like kids that are either operating like in a vacuum or in just like some sort of like alternate universe where like it's like, you know, their basis for passing something can just be that like we think it's a good idea or we want to do it. And any sort of arguments that, okay, yeah, but you can't, or yeah, but this is going to cause problems with existing law, falls on totally deaf ears. You know, I think about this a lot when I'm there, but was very recently because I was looking up stuff related to patient medical records, of course, and like how the courts have interpreted the right to, you know, records of third parties when they've been subpoenaed in cases, et cetera. So I found the like leading Louisiana Supreme Court case on this, which like describes in detail, of course, all the shit that the courts always say about how they interpret statutes based on legislative intent and what the legislature did. So I'm going to read this to you.
Okay.
It is presumed that every word, sentence, or provision in a law was intended to serve some useful purpose, that some effect is to be given to each such provision, and that no unnecessary words or provisions were employed. Does that seem? Courts are bound, if possible, to give effect to all parts of a statute and to construe no sentence, clause, or word as meaningless and surplusage if a construction giving force to and preserving all words can legitimately be found. It is presumed that the legislature acts with full knowledge of well-settled principles of statutory construction. Right, because of course, what they were saying on the first part here of the court, these are like every fucking case in every state and federally goes through this. This is like basic rules of statutory construction. Here's another one. They're quoting themselves here at the Louisiana Supreme Court. We are convinced that the legislature included these words in the statute for some definite purpose and that they cannot be declared meaningless if we can give them a reasonable interpretation. Because it is presumed that the legislature acts with full knowledge of all existing laws and the well-established rules, the well-settled rules of statutory construction, we can assume that in incorporating the word proper, this is about the Medocrat, incorporating the word proper, the legislature intended to impart a similar meaning to other statutes that they're using the word proper. I think about this when I'm there all the time. But because I just read this, it's been sort of cracking me up that like apparently no one has told them this, that like courts later like go through every single fucking word that they have included and like try to figure out why they used that word and how it relates to every other word in the statute and how it relates to every other word in other statutes. We need to laminate this. We need to laminate this.
Put it on
and
billboards.
hand it out. I just want a laminated card that we hand it to them, like at every single committee hearing. As we were teasing about last week, like, you know, the language of the bill. Like, yes, the language of the bill is super fucking important.
Yeah.
The words you use, courts later will assume that like you had a really like intentional meaning for doing that. And that, yeah, you're also roll aware of how courts interpret things and what existing laws. So how do you think that's going around there?
Not great. And also it makes me think about, they don't include legislative intent in bills anymore. They used to do that, actually. I feel like 10 years ago, there would be this long setup before all of the anti-abortion bills, right? Like it is the the intent of this legislature to protect unborn life, yada yada yada.
And they do that sometimes, but the reason is, so all the stuff I just told you,
right?
Like the first stuff that courts always say is that you don't look at the legislative intent if the words, if you can garner the intent from the words of the bill. So they only look at the intent if the words of the bill are unclear as to what they were trying to do. As you know, around there, like that's thrown around all the time. Like, well, our intent is to do, including with HB 575, our intent is to do this. Right. Our intent is to do that. I'm like, people like me and also like lawyers on.
Okay, but that's not what this bill is going to do.
And it doesn't matter what your intent is. That is a basically zero consequence. Like, what needs to be clear is the language, or what will happen is what the language of the bill says. So if it says you can do X, Y, and Z, or it doesn't let you do X, Y, and Z, but your intent, that wasn't your intent. No one cares. No one's going back to listen to like Clapper's testimony about what, don't worry about what the bill says. You know in my heart what I mean. And as we hear, the Louisiana Supreme Court don't care what you meant in your heart. What they care is what the face of the fucking bill says.
Oh my God.
So what's your seriously moment?
Mine is a little bit more lighthearted. So folks may remember at the beginning of the session, when we sort of previewed the session, that we talked about some of the batshit crazy bills or just random, this is important to like some very small constituency of people. So there is a bill, Senate Bill 46, that was introduced by Senator Fessy. I'm going to play a clip because the bill passed the Senate and it was on the House floor this week. And I have a little medley of the bill being presented on the floor by Kim Coates.
Yeah, I heard like one clip of this like on NPR, so I'm really dying to hear this.
So we're calling this the chemtrails bill now.
Rep. Willard for a question on the bill.
This is the process referred to as chemtrails.
Yes, that's another word for it.
So is what's happening is what people are in airplanes or helicopters and doing stuff to control the weather?
Yes.
And you said something about a reflective coating to direct sun rays into space?
Yes. So they use aluminum, barium, and different metals, and different chemicals above.
I would imagine that those metals are kind of heavy, so how do they stay suspended in the sky to reflect the rays of the sun?
Nanoparticles, like it's very, very small. They eventually do come down to the earth, and there has been reports where people have done soil testing and have found aluminum.
So since we detect aluminum in soil, people are dropping it from the sky to control the weather?
Yes, that is a possibility, yes, sir.
If there was an aircraft doing some type of release of these nanoparticles, because you can't see nanoparticles, so how would they be able to tell if that was being released?
So when you look up in the sky and you watch these planes, they'll have the white lines behind them. Now, when other regular planes are flying, it all just disappears.
And we're sure that these are like civilian aircrafts and not like UFOs or something like that?
Rep. Noel for a question on the bill.
I've been trying to follow what you talking about. Who else passed this legislation?
Multiple, so Tennessee, Florida, Philadelphia, so there's multiple states.
So 10 other states believe this too. That is disturbing.
When you driving, start looking up in the sky and you'll start seeing white lines going across the sky.
I've heard enough. Thank you.
I want to know, what are the regular planes that this isn't happening? There's like these planes with the regular exhaust is what I mean, every time I've seen in the sky, you know, something white coming at me, it's exhaust. It's always been every plane. What are the regular planes that don't have?
I'm going to get into that, but can we just talk about how Rep. Willard was able to maintain a completely straight face
You gotta do it like
through that whole line
Angela.
of questioning?
But that shit is like 100% like aluminum foil hat kind of.
Oh,
I
it's
mean, like
it's
just
nuts.
Very,
it's
very,
fucking
very
nuts. My favorite part, honestly, though, was when Candace Newell, when Rep. Coates is like, when you look up in the sky,
No.
and Candace Newell's like,
Oh
Okay,
my
so
God.
let me a public service announcement.
Please explain, Michelle. Let's do a little ask and answer.
Okay.
Michelle, what is the deal with white shit
streaks.
coming out of the back of a plane, which is apparently the nefarious, subject matter of this bill?
Right.
I think.
Yeah. So those are condensation trails, and what that is frozen water vapor crystallized on soot particles, both of which are standard byproducts of jet combustion engine.
So maybe a regular plane, whatever that is lower.
Well-
Assuming that this is not true for all planes, which I'm not buying that premise, but that could be, right? If it's a smaller plane, not at as high of a latitude, then it's not going to be like freezing as much, basically.
That's basically
my
right.
scientific analysis.
Yeah. No, you're not far off. So
Because
when
I'm not a fucking moron. That's why.
So when the air is warmer and drier, then that condensation dissipates more quickly
and doesn't gather as much.
Yeah. And so then when it's cold and wet, so when they're at higher elevations, then these condensation trails can actually stick around for like up to 6 hours. So she can rest assured that
But those nanoparticles are coming back to Earth.
we're not shooting nanoparticles of aluminum
I don't know.
into the atmosphere.
Well, they're coming to Earth. We heard about it.
Oh my God.
The
Seriously.
I mean, there is aluminum in the soil, so, Again, with we live in a make-believe world around
It
there.
passed.
I know. So, but what is it doing?
They've requested from the Department of Environmental Quality that they set up some sort of portal for people to report
This is not
things
just a
that they
bullshit
have
bill, but yeah.
seen, right?
Yeah.
So that they
So,
can
yeah.
start building a record.
This is
of,
our local this is the state DEQ,
right, the
Yeah.
Louisiana State
Which is-
Department of Environmental Quality.
Okay. So people can now report that
They can report
this.
that they have
Okay.
seen the streaks across the
And
sky.
maybe also the now aluminum in their overly fertilized soil.
That's correct. All I'm saying is about a year from now, after they get that thing set up, we're doing a public records request. I want to see what these reports are.
That. All I'm saying is
maybe we'll
hi,
read
folks.
them. Oh, we should read them on the podcast.
I mean, I'm interested to see.
Yeah. Oh my God, chemtrails. So we're going to start off talking about HB 575, the Sue Everybody bill. Okay. So we get to the committee hearing on Wednesday
In the Senate.
Senate. It's the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I checked before I got on the road, and just for folks that may be listening outside of Louisiana, I live in New Orleans, and it takes me about 75 minutes to get from my house to the state capitol in Baton Rouge. And so before I left, I checked to see if there had been any amendments posted on the bill.
Yes. And again, for background, we had heard that there were going to be amendments. Is there like a rule or something? How far in advance you have to post amendments?
They're
Michelle?
supposed to post them 24 hours before the hearing
Interesting.
to give both members of the committee, but also members of the public that have some interest in the legislation to understand what
Yes, this
changes
is a
are
public
going to
hearing.
be proposed.
Yeah.
Exactly. But they didn't do that. So the hearing starts. It's the first bill up. And what was interesting was it is Representative Ventrilla's bill, but she didn't come to the table to present the bill. Representative Emerson came to the table to
She's
present
been
the
like
bill.
the shadow author the whole time, but yeah, put Ventrilla in.
They
like,
benched her.
yeah.
They benched her. Yeah.
She's like in like a child corner.
Timeout. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's in timeout.
Yeah.
So Emerson comes to the table with the esteemed Erica and Zena. And the first thing that Emerson says is, we have some amendments. They're not posted online, you know.
We do have an amendment set that I would like to adopt from the get-go to go ahead and get the bill in the proper posture.
Okay. And this is amendment set 2290, is that correct?
I believe so. It's not online yet.
It's fine. So I'm watching the hearing, and Erica leans over to Julie Emerson and whispers, "Are we going to get a copy of the amendments?" And Julie Emerson's like, "Oh yeah, they'll hand them out to us." They do end up posting it online so we can open it up. So I have split screen on my iPad the original bill and the amendments, because Ellie, tell us about how they introduce amendments.
There's all different kinds of amendments to a bill. I mean, sometimes they're all laid out in the way that we're gonna talk about. But like sometimes they're really not that big of a deal, you know, like
They're like technical.
Yeah, or even just like it's just doing a few things. It's changing some words. They can be very significant even when they're just changing a few. I mean, you know, sometimes it's changing, like taking out not or like adding in not.
Or changing may to
Yeah,
shall.
that's right. I mean, so little things can be very important.
Right.
This is one of those situations where they're dramatically changing the bill.
It was
revisions
26 amendments.
There were extensive revisions to the bill that needed to be, that were complicated in and of themselves with each revision, let alone how they were all sort of interacting. For me, I was also driving to Baton Rouge, and luckily someone we work with was able to get one of these paper copies and called me and was reading them to me in the car. like literally. And like we're trying to figure out like, okay, so what does it say now? What's the revision? So this is that. It was like complete insanity. You have what the bill says, and then you basically get like an errata of the amendment. So it's not like a red line of the bill where you have like what it says now, what's being stricken, what's being taken out, what's being added in one combined document. You have a totally separate document that says on line 1, on page 1, line 23, after the word bullshit, insert not. on page 2,
Right.
line 15, after the word and will substantially delete the remainder of the line through the following 3 lines, and then insert but will also do X. I mean, that's basically exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Like, so it's an absolute puzzle to piece together. You have to like compare one document to the next and literally like mark it up.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what we were doing.
It's impossible to do that. Like it's literally impossible to do that. I'm just there, like I am just looking at my phone of the amendments, looking at the paper version of what the bill, now says, like going back and forth, trying to like change all of my testimony or figure out what is still relevant or what is new. Because I mean, it's not just that you don't have time to analyze like what is this actually doing. I mean, this is always a bunch of bullshit with amendments. Like you've come being ready to talk about some things.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, and particularly for non-lawyers there, you have people there that like have real stake, real stake, like all the doctors we had to testify. They have like a real interest in what this legislation says. They are not a lawyer, and they were given zero fucking notice of these changes. It's hard for a non-lawyer to have prepared what they were going to say, prepared what they were going to talk about, and then in real time be told, okay, actually, it doesn't say this anymore. It now says this. So don't talk about blah, 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 but you should talk about this other thing that now, like, that's a lot to ask of people, and we shouldn't be asking that of people. And it's a lot to ask of me, and I'm very good at that because I don't have fucking time to even read it.
Yeah.
The way that this works in general is just that amendments, so the people whose bill it is are presenting the bill, and either they propose amendments or the committee does, but that's less, at least those people have thought about it some, or somebody's read it. But like the proponents propose amendments, and whether you've read them in advance or not, it doesn't really matter what you have to say about it, because the presentation is just why they want the amendments, and then almost inevitably they get adopted.
Yeah.
And then you're coming up later to be like, hi, there's 50 million problems with this bill, and also with the goddamn amendments.
Well, also in the way that they were presented, Julie Emerson is like, this is just a clean, we're just cleaning, we're just tightening up the bill. We're just cleaning things up,
This is a set of amendments that it's a lot of cleanup. I feel like it tightens the bill quite a bit. It's just clarifying who can file suit, things of that nature.
Basically what they've done is just add a bunch of tort words, just like add a bunch of words that you learn in first year, law school. But like the actual conception of it is not very different. Like there's some things they've done that have limited some of the scope, but the general concept is still hugely problematic. And the only way you would know that is if you could read the goddamn sentence as one sentence just in its entirety.
Yeah.
This is the last opportunity for the public to weigh in on this bill, period. Absolutely the end in terms of testimony. And amendments can be made like on the floor, but like the sausage is supposed to be kind of like vetted and done at this point. And what instead has happened is that they proposed a bullshit, we're in our clubhouse version of a bill that was like, what could we do if we wanted to like make everybody be able to sue all the people who we don't like, then what would we do? How would we do that? And Clapper was like, awesome, Erica, you should draft that. And she was like, great, I'm going to do that. And then what she did was like an outline of a bill, like a concept of a bill. And then all these weeks, that's what we've been fighting over, when they refused to fucking amend it. They refused to make any substantive changes, like really. And now they're like, okay, so I guess it does turn out that like we need to at least like include some tort words, need to like limit this in some ways that are like, don't make any fucking sense at all. So we're going to like completely revise the bill now we're basically going to write the bill now for the first time and not give anybody like any time or notice to look at it. That's not only nefarious, it's also really fucking stupid. And the way that we end up in a situation where courts are later assuming, right, as we talked about before, like, oh no, the legislature intended all of these goddamn words. And you're like, the legislature hadn't even read them.
Yeah.
The legislature would have changed some of these. Some of the stuff that's still in the bill now is just like dumb drafting shit. I can't.
Oh my God. Okay. So the first person that was called up to testify in opposition to the bill, just also for an aside, they had no one there other than Erica to testify in support of the bill.
Well, they were trying to get this quietly done. But
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the first people that got called up to testify was Morgan Lamondre from STAR.
First, I just want to say from the start that not posting these amendments until just now is really, really harmful, that people are now coming up and not truly able to prepare for their testimony and to say if they still have concerns or not. There should be some objection to hold this over to give us some time to process all of these amendments to start with. The idea that this is, somehow not against the woman because the woman who obtained an abortion, it's just, that person may not actually directly be sued, but still, that person's medical records, their life, everything about what is happening, they're going to be involved. So it's really disingenuous to say that, oh, well, they're not sued to make us feel better. There aren't many people going around self-identifying as rapists. So you pretty much have to have a mini trial from the beginning to establish if somebody was in fact, a rapist, and the act that caused a pregnancy was a rape. These are just feel-good things on the bill to make us feel better about passing something that will just dramatically impact a person who, regardless of if they had an abortion, this is, again, putting them into a space that they are not consenting to. Other than that, I can't really say all of the other issues because I haven't had a chance to go through and understand the magnitude of the amendments.
Yes. So first of all, Senator Luneau, who's on this committee and is also a lawyer, although just any committee member should feel this way, then, he had already made this point when he was trying to ask the proponents of the bill, ask Julie Emerson and Liz Murrell, some questions about it. He's like, I just got this, haven't been able to read this. But I really appreciated when Morgan got up there that she made a big point of this. And to be clear also to folks, Morgan is a lawyer. Morgan also she drafts a lot of legislation, at the Capitol, stuff to support survivors of sexual assault. So she understands how to read a bill, both as a lawyer and someone who helps, draft this kind of shit. And she's exactly, I was just like, thank you for saying that, because, they don't care, but it is worth making the point.
Some of the stuff that she was talking about is, the original bill says that the father can't file one of these lawsuits if the pregnancy resulted from rape.
It still says that.
Yeah, it does still say that. And this is still a huge problem. And I think that point about how are you going to know whether this person that is filing the suit raped the pregnant patient without having some sort of legal process to make that determination.
That's right. I mean, so one of the changes that they made to the bill that is an improvement is that they took out the other fucking family members who can sue. They've now limited it just to the quote unquote dad, the quote, biological or legal father.
Right.
So they're rolling patting themselves on the back. I think about that. They heard concerns about all these random people. Which, that's great that now, your estranged mother of 30 years, that you haven't spoken to in 30 years can't
Probably
sue.
Because she's like a fucking crazy Bible
That's
beater.
Right.
And
that's right.
you haven't wanted to talk to her.
She's going to be watching the chemtrails, so she's going to be busy. But, she might.
But if she finds out that maybe you were pregnant and then
yeah.
you weren't pregnant,
That's right.
she could be very concerned.
So that person, they unfortunately for them now, that will not be somebody who they can try to hunt down, that crazy person to convince to sue. But the real, the most likely harmful person in this scenario always, who could potentially be suing without your consent or without your best wishes in mind, is the quote unquote dad.
Yeah.
So all they've done here is they've said, so it has to be the biological father, and the person, and the pregnancy cannot have been the result of rape.
Right.
But yeah, as you're saying, and what Morgan has made this point the whole time, is that you can say that on the face of a bill, but those are those are factual issues that would have to then be adjudicated and proven. Are you the fucking biological father? And or did you rape the person in order to now give yourself standing to do this? So yeah, just again, saying on the face of the bill that these people can't sue doesn't make them not be able to do it.
No.
This isn't a criminal proceeding where then it would be like the DA is like, well, we can't do it. All you need to do is file a fucking lawsuit.
Yeah.
And then, everybody else has to go through proving why you don't qualify as a person who is allowed to do this. These are hugely factual issues.
Right. Like if there had been a criminal conviction of the rape, then that would make this easy. But most people who are raped don't report, and especially if they have been raped or sexually, abused by someone that they know, like, someone close to them. And those are the most likely people that are going to be filing this suit.
Even if you'd been convicted, that asshole could still file a lawsuit just to like fuck with you, but you would be able to get it dismissed quickly.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's an unadjudicated factual issue. Like this, the same with the who is the biological father. Like that's an open factual issue that hasn't been determined. That we're like, yeah, no, just like that person says, blah blah.
Yeah. Let's talk about one of the other changes that they made with the amendments, which is on the issue of substantially facilitates. So set that up for us. Why do we have those two words in this legislation? What do they think they mean? And how did they amend the bill to try to clarify, but have maybe made it a little bit more confusing?
So as some people will remember, the bill initially said performs, causes, or aids and abets. Or maybe it just said performs or aids and abets. I don't think. Anyway, I think it was performs, causes, or aids and abets. Then they amended it to say performs, causes, or substantially facilitates, and provided a definition of substantially facilitates. That was like a whole host of like just things that people can do in relation to an abortion-inducing drug. So it's like advertising, marketing, distributing, blah, 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 promoting, blah, 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 an abortion-inducing drug. That's what substantially facilitates means. They started with basically a shell bill here that had like absolutely no specifics. And as they've like been forced to continue to amend it, then all that has happened with that, from my perspective, is that the amendments have continued to confirm what I could tell from the beginning was what they were trying to fucking do with this bill.
Right.
So this being like with aiding and abetting, that they're trying to get at like a whole bunch of people that like are involved way back in the process with like abortion inducing drugs. Yeah, like selling them into the state, marketing them, like all sorts of stuff like that.
But it also would like grab a bunch of other people that are like just assisting someone with trying to get an abortion.
When they use that definition for substantially facilitates, they're telling us who they're trying to go after with like all the supply chain with abortion inducing drugs. Just listen to that. What you're talking about that no one keeps focusing on is that's in the causes part. That's in the causes.
Well,
They've
the
never
promotion
defined
is what
that.
I was talking about.
Yeah,
really.
that's right. But it's the same, because like that would the causes, and then the way that they like added language about with people like Morgan with like sexual assault like counselors, that the promoting language that wasn't substantially facilitates,
Right.
but it's really like they've got that in causes. In the revised version of the bill, they amended substantially facilitates to like limit it again in some ways about that. Yeah, like all the supply chain folks, they took out the promoting, but with causing, nothing done on that. And with the mental health people, then they changed it just to say that you can't be held liable for providing support and counseling services if it's in a manner that doesn't substantially facilitate procuring an abortion or abortion-inducing drug. That's new language. Like, why are we just like continuing to draft this? Throw in new things, take out old things. Like, let's try this language. Let's swap this in. Let's swap that out.
All right. But the intent here is they want an aggrieved dad who may or may not be a rapist
and may or may not be the fucking dad
to be able to sue the sexual assault counselor who met with the survivor in this situation and said, you know, oh my God, I'm so sorry this happened to you and you're pregnant.
Yep.
Jesus Christ. Like, here is a website that you can go to where you can order abortion medication, or here is
somebody in another state.
Here is a clinic, you know, in another state that you can go to. Here is, you know, somebody that can help you with financial resources, or someone that you don't, you know, maybe you don't have a family member that can travel with you and you don't want to do this alone. They will go with you, right?
Yeah, they want to sue that person.
Okay. They want to sue that person. They want to sue people who are posting information online about where people can get abortion medication through the mail. They definitely want to sue them.
That's right. I mean, they've been dying to do that. If they can link that in any way, for sure.
Yeah. They even want to sue your sister or, you know, your fun aunt that like, you know, helped you figure out how to get a fucking abortion.
Beyond that, what they want is, and this could all happen at the same time, of course. So you can be suing like Morgan, right? As like the person who, you know, helped just give you some information about like, you know, a legal option for you or just some sort of resources. So her, then the New York doctor, right? And then, of course, we want to sue, again, the people who are... So the New York doctor, she's getting the drugs from somewhere that are then being mailed here. So we want to be able to sue all three of those people. When I actually read the bill, when I could get home and fucking write it out myself, like by hand, then it hasn't really changed in terms of the, like, we want to find people that, like, supposedly have been harmed, and then we want to identify people who have supposedly done bad things, and then have those people sue. And it doesn't matter if we can link it up, because newsflash, I think it probably sounds like no one who this New York doctor has like supposedly harmed so badly wants to sue her.
Yeah.
If that were the case, they wouldn't need to draft the bill like this.
Some of the people that we haven't talked about in terms of are they included in substantially facilitate would be actual providers here that are providing pregnancy care to someone. And so there was a really great exchange between two of the providers that came to testify about their concerns on the bill and their opposition to the bill and Senator Luno. So I want to play that as they're trying to suss out what substantially facilitates means.
Yeah. In the amendments, there are numerous amendments where they change the language to say that it is substantially facilitated or facilitates. That's my question. What would, from y'all's world, from the medical world, what would substantially facilitates? What would that entail? What would be a good definition for that?
That seems more like a kind of a legal elastic clause with no clear clinical relevance.
There's no medical definition of substantially facilitating. I have no idea what that means.
Well, I don't see a definition in the bill itself either, or in the amendments, but the amendments say that substantially facilitate shall not include the provisions of medications for legal therapeutic purposes under the laws of the state. Does that clear it up any?
That's something that has to be established well after the fact at the cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars plus. And I think if this is a situation where someone is potentially bleeding out within minutes, there's no way we can determine if we are protected in time to actually save our patient's life and honor our oath.
If a family member after the fact can just look and see my so-and-so, my spouse, was pregnant and now they are no longer pregnant, and this doctor is the doctor who saw them, they can bring a suit against me and anyone else involved in that care without any kind of medical review to see if what I performed was in fact medically indicated or not. And then it falls to me with my time, my mental distress, my money.
So this is 100% right, and I love it. So, and just to sort of drill down again, then substantially facilitates 100% was defined before and still is now as administering, prescribing, or dispensing these drugs. So any doctor or pharmacist, like they're in that chain of events,
100%.
right? And the kind of caveat they've now put in a definition, or they have carved out that substantially facilitates does not mean providing those drugs for a legal therapeutic purpose. There's some scope limitations here, right? Like I've been saying the whole time, like, like you can have like had no intent at all, no knowledge, no intent, no fucking like anything about this, but like you did something in a long chain of events that substantially facilitated or caused this abortion. But to the doctor's point, then that's still a fact issue, right? So like you can't be held liable if you quote substantially facilitated, prescribing or administering the drug for a legal and therapeutic purpose. That's actually not really going to help a doctor hardly at all. You would have to show that yes, I did administer or prescribe that drug, but it was for a legal and therapeutic purpose, which is no different than what the bill already said before in terms of Louisiana providers, right?
Yeah. You did come to the table. Luckily, you were one of the last people to testify. So that gave you, I don't know, maybe 10 more minutes.
When I'm sitting in that committee hearing, I need to be listening to what the fuck people are saying.
Yeah.
Like, what are the proponents saying? What are the questions that are being asked by the committee? Because as you know, I'm always up there being like, so-and-so just said this. That's not true.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. Asked this before. Here's like, here's another point on that. So I'm trying to do that while I also try to figure out what the fuck the bill says now to also change what I was already planning to say about that. So it's just, it's bullshit. This is one of the more egregious versions of this that I have ever seen.
Well, last year when they did this with the scheduling, adding an amendment,
that's right.
last minute,
no
notice on scheduling.
That one was super fucked up because they similarly did where they had planned to do it and did it at the last site. That one was super fucked up because it was a whole new concept, a whole new like area of the law, which is part of why we're suing about
right.
that it was not germane to the bill. But that was at least easy to understand what they were literally doing, just the implications of it. You didn't have any time to look at. This is where like it was basically impossible to even understand what they were doing because it's like 3 pages, 3 legal sized pages of on page 1, delete this word. Right. On page 2, delete these 5 lines, insert this whole other thing. I mean,
I'm just going to propose a challenge for our listeners. If there are any of you out there that want a good weekend challenge for yourself, then we will post a link to the amendments and to the bill, and you take them side by side, and then we want to hear in the comments on this episode what your interpretation of some of this bullshit is.
I don't want to see any cheating though. Don't cheat.
No cheating.
Don't
you have
cheat.
to do it the
You
same way
gotta
that
do
Ellie
it.
and I were doing it in the committee hearing. Okay, so I want to play a little mashup of your testimony when you finally were able to come to the table.
That's good because I blacked out during that, so I have no idea what I said.
You and Morgan both. When Morgan finished testifying, she came and sat next to me, and then she said, "I hope that was okay. I totally blacked out in a rage fit." And I was like, "Yeah."
You kind of always black out as a lawyer when you're like testify or arguing. It's just sort of like you're like, I remember going up there and starting talking.
All right, well, let's hear what you said.
I do want to reiterate from the beginning that this is very concerning not having had these amendments beforehand. The bill was very confusing before, and some things have been done to improve it. I will say that for sure, but it's still very confusing and hard to figure out how all of these things would fit together. Senator Luneau, to your question about would this bill address the issue that we've heard so much about the New York doctor who they can't extradite. And so this would provide, some sort of other tool in the toolbox, a loophole, yada, yada. That is not true. New York has a civil shield statute. In New York and a lot of other states, then there's what's called a clawback litigation, where that person can sue the person who sued them or who criminally charged them. So, we might want to add like a disclaimer in here for any plaintiffs that they might get sued themselves. Let's talk quickly about malpractice protections. So first, it's a rebuttable presumption, so you're going to be litigating the presumption before you know if you have coverage. But then I think more importantly then, it says, you're covered if you're acting within the lawful scope of practice in accordance with law. I don't know what that means. I don't think that we've solved that issue, although it is good that at least there's like an avenue that a doctor could go through to try to still get coverage, but that's going to be heavily litigated, and I'm not sure that that's going to be enough to get malpractice insurers to feel like that this isn't going to be a problem. I won't get into the super weeds about this, but I had a very, very long conversation with someone last night who's in the healthcare field on this. This is like trying to help the malpractice situation. And I don't think it's not a bad idea, but it doesn't make any fucking sense. They have inserted scope of practice shit throughout this bill that has no meaning in this context. Like that has nothing to scope of practice has nothing to do with whether you're acting lawfully or unlawfully, but they're kind of trying to use it for that. And then a rebuttable presumption. I'm like, rebuttable presumption is there's an element of this that is factual that someone has to prove. And so we're going to, if you just show this like little bit, we're going to presume that you have shown it, and it shifts the burden of proof to the other person. Here it's just like, I'm like, what's the other side of the rebuttable fucking presumption? What I'm bitching about here is that it sounds like instead that what is supposed to be a presumption in my favor, I have to litigate it on the front end instead. I have to prove that I was doing whatever this scope of practice in whatever that language is that it doesn't really mean anything. I have to prove that, even when people are trying to amend a bill in a way that is like they have heard a problem, if that language is not vetted at all, if it's just like, one or two people who don't know shit about shit worked on it a week before the bill becomes law, and nobody else has time to read it or weigh in on it, then, you made it a little bit better, but you created a whole other problem here.
Yeah, there was a lot of opposition testimony. There were several doctors that came to testify. We had medical students that came that did a fabulous job. Yep. And Audrey Wascom, who is a survivor herself, and then Caitlin Joshua and Nancy Davis. It was great. It was an impressive lineup, I will say, and kudos to Caitlin Joshua, especially for organizing so many people to come and preparing them.
I could not have asked for like better people to show up on our side and to A, have a good plan to begin with, and B, be able to pivot with, no notice and a bunch of fucking bullshit.
The privacy of a medical conversation and action plan that a provider has with a pregnant patient is sacred. Bringing into the conversation the presumed provider of sperm is to me unfathomable. What happens to the mental health care provider who tells patients where to go? This seems to be a limit on the practitioner for mental health through treating depression and anxiety, and now being unable to share with the patient where she is able to go.
Knowing that we have a statewide abortion ban with ambiguous exceptions in place, this allows for potential plaintiffs to second-guess medical professionals' opinions, misinterpret current legislation, and file legal proceedings that are costly, timely, and otherwise not indicated under our current laws.
If I am forced with the possibility of financial ruin, unnecessary litigation, and wasted time in court costs, or leaving the state to practice, I would choose to leave the state.
When we criminalize this medication on every level, threaten doctors with a fine of $100,000 to infinity in a state where the malpractice cap for killing the pregnant woman entirely is capped at $250,000. In this case, the living victim had a heavy period. and literally nothing happened to her.
As a future physician, I want to have the safety to exercise my medical judgment, including the prescription of safe, effective, and legal medications, without fear of excessive liability. Reasonable medical judgment takes years of school, training, and experience to develop. We began this process our first week of medical school. The proposed bill expands the group of plaintiffs who can second-guess that judgment.
Good morning. My name is Audrey Wascom, and I'm a resident of Baton Rouge. I am a survivor of childhood sex trafficking and child sexual abuse material. HB 575 in its current form hands rapists and traffickers more power. With this bill, a perpetrator only has to threaten a survivor or concoct a story of someone helping their victim to maintain control.
Yes, good morning. My name is Caitlin Joshua. I'm from Baton Rouge, and I survived our state's abortion ban in 2022 when I was denied health care at 11 weeks pregnant while self-managing a miscarriage. It is not explicitly outlined in law or in the amendments at all. Its intent to use this for out-of-state bad actors only, and that's a major concern of mine. Lastly, state liability is still not limited to unlawful conduct or unlawful abortions, and the main liability provision does not limit liability to conduct in this state.
No one should have access to my records unless I say so. No one should be able to drag my business through court just because they don't agree with the private, painful decision I had to make. If you vote for this bill, you are not doing it for God. You are not doing it for family, and you are not doing it for life. You are doing it for control.
You got cut off during your testimony, and so you were sitting next to Caitlin Joshua, who hadn't testified yet, and you were furiously scribbling something on a legal pad, and then you slid it over to Caitlin, who I think had already started talking at that point.
That's right.
And so Caitlin had her prepared testimony, which she went through, and then at the very end of it, and she says, one last point I want to make, and then she spouts off what she's reading off of the legal pad, and it was brilliant. She did it like brilliantly, like it felt very natural. It was great. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that's 100% what happened. In this time with this committee, then they limited us to 3 minutes, which, as we've talked about, is not like an uncommon thing. But I personally was not expecting that with this committee. They don't normally do that. It was a busy day for them, but that's not really why they were doing it. They were like, we've decided what we're going to do about this. We've got a plan, and we don't really need to like belabor all this shit. But it's very hard in 3 minutes. It's particularly very hard with as many problems like this. So yeah, I continued to talk for a little while Greg Miller was
the buzzer went off. Ellie's still talking.
That's right. But like he still cut me off pretty quickly, whatever. But yes, I immediately started trying to write in my neatest handwriting.
Which is even still chicken scratch.
I don't know. She read it pretty well. But yeah, so I get through writing it. But then of course I'm like, okay, I like change. I think I maybe was going to be able to get it to her before she started. I don't know. Like I changed course. I'm like, no, this is too much. Like just limit it to like this one thing. So writing it very, very clearly. And then yeah, rip it off, pass it over to her. And yeah, she did it awesome.
It was so slick. It was so slick.
I was so fucking pissed.
One person on the committee was actually really moved by some of the testimony, and that's Senator Mizell. And Senator Mizell is no pro-choice hero. She is very, very, very anti-abortion.
I was going to say, I would put it, she is no friend of abortion access.
That's right.
But she does care about women's health issues, and she does care about sexual assault survivor issues. She harbors some genuine concerns for people in these circumstances.
She does have a lot of genuine empathy. Yeah. So she was listening very intently to the testimony from the doctors. So I want to play that exchange and then what she decided to do as a result of that.
I understand the need. I've had a horrible miscarriage history, so I know that, and I know the value of the treatment that you all provide and the fear when you go in there. And I don't think you've had an opportunity to look at the amendments, but Amendment 20 allows for, it addresses sorry, a healthcare provider licensed to practice medicine. Sorry. And acting within the proper scope of practice pursuant of Louisiana law would not, so you would not be part of the concern there. You would still be able to use the medications as you see fit within your scope of practice.
The complication would arise if someone has, for example, obtained misoprostol through the mail and is in the process of miscarrying. They come into my OB/ED and I treat them further for hemorrhage, giving them additional misoprostol. Have I then facilitated their abortion?
A lot of the conversation is kind of brought about an amendment, and I'd like to offer an amendment. On page 3, line 19, which is the section under the no actions could be brought against the following. It allows, on line 19, section 2, within that, a healthcare provider licensed to practice medicine in the state, period.
Yeah. So before we get into, what a good job Senator Mizell did and how that amendment is helpful, I just want to circle back to what I was saying before about why the language that they're adding when she's asking her, when it's like, when it says, when it says if you're a Louisiana, licensed doctor and you're acting in the scope of practice like provided by law, but that, doesn't that give you more, give you less concern? Like this is why this is insane and doesn't make any sense. I think what they mean, or what they're trying to say with this, is that they're using scope of practice as a proxy for acting unlawfully, or doing something illegal. That makes no sense. But there's different concepts that they're trying to sort of equate that just literally are not the same at all.
Yeah. So essentially, just to clarify and simplify,
yes,
because that's my job, Ellie, is to
you should always
bring it down to the normal person. What Senator Mizell decided after hearing all the testimony and actually getting the concept that the way that the bill is currently drafted is confusing enough that doctors providing pregnancy care here could be caught up in this. And so she has been convinced by the proponents who have just repeated over and over again that this is about bad out-of-state providers that are unlawfully mailing abortion medication into the state. And so it makes a lot of sense to her to say, okay, if that's who we're going after, then let's just exempt in-state providers completely from the bill.
And I had said from the beginning, if that's really your intent, then why don't we just have just an absolute exemption for in-state doctors? And so, she was like,
let's
okay,
just simplify this. If we're not trying to throw doctors practicing in Louisiana into these insane civil proceedings where they have limitless liability and maybe they can't get malpractice insurance. Then
and
let's
also
just
we're
take them
we're
out.
The random, now it's not any family member, but it's the random dad. It's just I'm pretty sure that what that doctor did did not qualify under the exceptions. I'm pretty sure that it was outside of her scope of practice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So good on Beth Mizell and that amendment.
It's very, very helpful because it's clear.
Last thing on this bill is our new segment, Asked and Answered.
Would this bill apply to these cases that y'all discussed just a minute ago that are currently pending? That I don't know if charges have been leveled or what's going on.
It's not retroactive, so this would be moving forward.
Okay.
The bill does not include any prohibition on retroactivity.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
right. In order for a bill like this or a law like this to be clear, that it only applies prospectively, it needs to say that. There is absolutely no language in the bill at this time to that effect.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
There were some provisions in here, and quite frankly, the amendments are pretty long. What is the issue with the prescriptive period for any such claim as this? What are the parameters of that?
There is currently a cause of action for a woman who, upon whom an abortion is performed, and that cause of action prescribes after 3 years with a preemptive period of 10. We're suggesting to extend it to 5 because we know of the reality of what it takes for a woman to realize the harm that was caused to her.
Thank you for asking. I want to reiterate that the whole concept of this bill and liability in this situation, which is the same under existing law, is where the person consented to the abortion. The person consented to the care. The only thing that's going to change in the extending it a few more years is like, yeah, maybe the crisis pregnancy centers to convince you that like,
Or your
you're kinda
preacher,
sorry.
I don't know, your Bible thumping,
Yeah.
family members.
Yeah.
All right, let's say that a father takes advantage of the 10-year preemptive period and he comes in 9 years later and makes this claim. How does the mother defend against that? First of all, how does he prove he's the father of the child?
I think that is an excellent question of how the father would prove that, and that would be his burden of proving. But we believe that the father, being that it is his unborn child that has been taken from him, should have the right of action of finding some recourse.
So notice this circular logic there, right?
Yeah.
The father who it was his unborn child should have this right of action, but it will be his burden of proving it. Like, we don't know at the time that you're giving this person this right of action if they even are the quote father.
Give me your best argument on constitutionality of this.
There's no constitutional issue. We can regulate this, and it's not legal to cause an abortion here anyway.
As you know, we've spent millions over the last decade defending unconstitutional bills, and so
Actually, I've always taken the position that they are constitutional, and I've defended them.
You have always taken this. So let me answer to Liz Murrow first. You have always taken that position that they are constitutional, and you have always defended them.
And you have
certainly
lost
not
in the
always,
Supreme Court.
Yes, multiple times, like on abortion-related legislation and on others. On
Non-unanimous juries, I believe.
Retroactivity of capital punishment for juvenile. I mean, there's a host of issues. So yes, that is true. But thank you, Senator Leno, for asking this question. It's super clear to me from Liz Murrow's answer that she has not really given this very much thought at all in terms of like the constitutionality of a law like this. That I don't think that, her answer was it's illegal for them. It's illegal for out-of-state providers to be sending the pills here. That is not an answer to the question about whether this bill is constitutional in multiple respects, or even really giving it like a fair, just like answer, basically. I mean, like whether we as a state can be interfering with what people in other states are doing, that's one issue. But this whole fucking bill is also a clusterfuck of unconstitutionality under the goddamn tort laws, as I've been saying the whole time.
If someone from Louisiana transported someone or drove someone, the word transported seems so technical, if someone from Louisiana gave a ride to a pregnant person to a state that allowed abortion, would that person be able to be charged with a crime?
No, because it's about things that happen in the state of Louisiana.
A big sister
If
takes
if the abortion occurred out of state, then we have no cause of action.
Is that true?
Well, they would not be allowed to be charged with a crime, which I think Senator Carter didn't necessarily mean to say that, but that is sort of important.
Could they be sued
Because
under this? I think is
because
what
I was
he
like, God
meant.
damn it, to begin with. I was like, because Julie being like, no, I'm like, well, because that's true. They wouldn't be allowed to be charged with a crime. But no, I mean, this, Julie, or Rep. Emerson is doing the same thing as Rep. Ventrella did, where they say like an unequivocal no to questions like that, but they don't like justify that by any language of the bill.
In the bill, yeah, exactly.
And in fact, like there's plenty of language in the bill that would support an argument, that there would or could be liability in that circumstance. And as we've already seen, courts are going to look at the actual language of the bill. So if that's not their intent, they could again make it clear that cannot be, that
because
the
the
bill
plaintiff's
cannot impose
attorney
liability.
Could make the argument that patient's sister driving them across, borders into another state, or flying them into another state to have abortion.
This is not going to be a hard argument to make, Michelle. I mean,
could have been what caused the abortion.
The language of the bill is in no way limited to an unlawful abortion or to in-state conduct.
That's right.
What if someone calls a crisis hotline and they're referred to a website, and on that website there's information about abortion procedures and options? Would referring someone to a website be a cause of action or create some sort of harm?
No.
Just full stop now.
That's has been my amazing frustration, and I think it is kind of hilarious this whole time. It's just no. I mean, the real answer that, like, thank you for asking, if like you were being honest, is that a court would have to determine that. A court would have to decide if that fit within the language, or if it was like too tangentially related. But nothing in the bill would prohibit that interpretation, and certainly anybody could sue on that basis under this proposed law. That's
right.
The reality.
So as the hearing wrapped up, Rep. Emerson and Rep. Ventrella came back to the table.
We felt like it was relatively clear, but we'll be happy to completely clarify it where there's no question, and we'll work on an amendment between here and the floor to make sure that a woman's medical records remain private, and those would not be admissible without her permission.
Okay, so Ellie, is there any way that amendment would do anything to address this issue?
This was incredibly frustrating to me, and not only because I think that this is disingenuous and we can talk about that, but also because one of the main things that I'd wanted to say when I was getting cut off by Chairman Miller, it's not just patient medical records that are going to be a problem here in terms of what the invasive nature of discovery and the burden on the non-plaintiff person who had the abortion. Rep. Emerson saying that they're going to put an amendment on the bill that says that those records cannot be disclosed, or parties cannot get them without her permission.
The medical records are critical because, one, the person bringing the lawsuit needs to somehow or another prove that abortion
that's
happened.
Right. This is going to be the issue with all evidence. That's what I mean, that it's not just going to be medical records. The whole issue in one of these cases is going to be, did the person have an abortion, and did this person provide an abortion? Right? Those are the fact issues. So the person who has almost all of the information about that is the patient, who is not a party, right? Is a third party. So of course, the most relevant evidence would be what we're talking about, whatever this supposed, the procedure that was this supposed abortion, whether that even exists, of course, that medical record. That person's basically going to be under constant subpoena, right? That you're being subpoenaed for sure for a deposition. You're being subpoenaed for all kinds of other things that are going to be relevant. Like we've talked about, your communications with your friends, your travel records. What the fact pattern is will alter what information is being subpoenaed of you.
Right.
But you're the only person who has that information. If there's, a debate about who said what and who was sleeping with who, maybe I need,
his text messages. Maybe he was having an affair.
And his medical records with his therapist. Did he talk to him or her about, shit, I knocked up this bitch, or
oh my
so
God.
I just started sleeping with this married girl.
Oh my gosh.
No, I mean, you are right. For the most part, then, that's again sort of the fuckery of this, is that where a plaintiff, normally there's lots of facts at issue about them. In this scenario, the quote unquote biological father, for the most part, like, there's not necessarily a lot that would be at issue with him. But this stuff for sure. Yeah. Like,
Okay. So, just
also,
put that in your back pocket, any future defendants.
I'd like to
in these
also
lawsuits.
reiterate to also any future plaintiffs, just keep in mind, if
Claw
you're trying
back.
to sue somebody,
Claw
that's right.
back.
Yes.
Yeah,
And,
your ass gonna get sued back.
And I didn't say this at the committee, but this is a good PSA. The New York statute also allows for punitive damages against people who are suing New York doctors with the intent of intimidating and harassing them from providing care. So there's like the legislative history of this.
It ain't good.
It's gonna make that real clear. So
let's talk a little bit about House Bill 76. So our listeners will remember that we did an entire episode on this with Dietz and DeKeitra a couple weeks ago. This is the bill that aims to criminalize exposure to an STD. We thought that the bill was dead because it was deferred in the House committee, and on Wednesday this past week it was brought back.
Right. She told them, like, but I told everybody, advocates, I do want to hear from people and try to work on this. And my understanding is not only did she bring it back, but like she didn't do that in terms of listening to and working with people. Yeah.
She said that she had received all the emails and had read all the emails. Okay. But as far as we know, she did not make any effort to have like direct conversations to address some of the issues in the bill. However, she did propose an amendment, a couple of amendments. One is that they're changing it from an STD to an incurable STD. So it narrows the types of STDs that could qualify.
Right. Okay.
But it's still super problematic because there are things that are extremely prolific, like HPV, for example. I think that would fall into that category, in which a lot of people never show symptoms, so they never really know that they have it, or it enters into the state in which it's not
herpes is for sure like that.
Yeah,
but it's incurable, but it's coming and going, and you might not always be able to. But for sure, you're not always contagious.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that was the one thing, and then the other thing that they changed is they have changed exposure. So the unlawful act is not exposure; it is transmission.
To our conversation with again, it's like the same with the amendments to fucking HB 575. It's like you got to read these things together. I mean, his point was, that the exposure versus transmission is not like a meaningful change depending on what the categories of the STIs are.
That's right.
Right. And so, they've like changed the category, but have they sufficiently changed it?
So the opponents of the bill, including Dietz and DeKeitra and many others, testified again about just how harmful the bill is, and even with these changes, a lot of what the problem is. What was apparent and like kind of the theme of this second hearing on this bill was Representative Cox's hostility. Representative Knox's hostility to the opposition. And every single person that came up to testify about the bill and their opposition, he questioned them in a very similar manner.
Which obviously there's a lot of noteworthy things about that, but I think one important one is that he is a Democrat in New Orleans.
He is a Democrat in New Orleans, but he is not a doctor.
Or a lawyer, as I can tell constantly.
And he is on the Criminal Justice Committee.
To me, the penalty could be more when you talk about $1,000 and 6 months infecting somebody with an incurable disease and withholding that information. To me, that seems small, but it's your bill, and I'll leave it to you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Garvey. You've given me more to think about as a non-attorney on this committee. And listening to your words, I'm trying to process a scenario whereby if a person is infected and know they're infected and they're engaged in sexual activity with someone, from a legal perspective, I would imagine that a lawyer would want to know all of the sexual partners that an individual had who is now infected to make a determination as to whether any of those individuals had a sex disease or not.
This is Meg Garvey. She is a lawyer. She's a public defender. She's a great lawyer. She also testifies a lot at the legislature. Did he say to her, wouldn't you as a lawyer want to know the sexual partners of everyone you're sleeping with, their sexual partners,
Right.
to know if they maybe had, I mean, are we like in like, you know, like 10th grade? Or I just can only imagine how she must have been like, what? A, how does this have anything to do with the bill? But like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm already beyond.
Yeah, no, it goes on like this.
Oh,
I
I
actually
know.
didn't include.
I'm already here. I know I'm going to be here. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
My question is, as it relates to this bill, this bill speaks to a person who is infected and know that they're infected.
Right.
Do you not think it's reasonable that a person who is infected with a disease, they should not disclose that to the partner? Do you or wouldn't you agree that just on a basic principle that someone who has a disease should disclose that disease to the person they're engaged with? And shouldn't there be some kind of criminal consequence to it when they do not? Again, I'm no attorney. I'm just a simple old Marine, and I try to keep things simple and in a simple, basic thought process, notwithstanding and acknowledging everything that I heard from you all previously as it relates to retaliatory efforts by a disgruntled or upset partner who has gotten angry and moved on and weaponized the knowledge that they have. I think to the average, basic, simple-minded person like myself who is engaged in a relationship with someone, whether I may get upset 6 months, 9 months, 15 years down the road is irrelevant to my partner who knows that they have an infection, not giving me that courtesy and that right to know that they have it. And you know you're infected, but you choose not to tell me and give me the courtesy to make the determination if I want to stay with you or not.
At some point, we're going to need to realize you can't legislate morals. This whole thing gets framed about that, but we're forgetting to sort of think beyond the moral question and what are the consequences? What's the effect? What's the impact of doing this? And that's where I think the conversations that we're having today need to be centered.
It's such a good point, and like him saying it does sort of reiterate to me a lot of the problem around there. So in first year tort, well, I mean, you only take torts first year, but at the beginning of torts, one of the things that they tell you that is like really revelatory is that there is not a remedy in the law for all like injuries, for all bad things that happen to people.
Yeah, because
the
sometimes
law
things
does
just
not,
suck. And
that's
sometimes
right.
people are just
the law,
bad actors,
that's
but
right.
it's not
the
illegal.
Law
It shouldn't
does
be
not, that's
illegal.
right. Or be liable. The law does not have a remedy for all things that are bad that people suffer. And you know, I think regular people forget that sometimes, and clearly our lawmakers do, right?
I mean, I'm just going to go on the record and say, as soon as we fucking let that woman sue McDonald's because she poured fucking hot coffee in her own goddamn lap, we lost the battle here.
Yeah, I mean that's a dated reference for any of our young listeners.
But it's fucking true. It's absolutely true.
It is true, but it's also just again like it's way more pervasive than that. And I think that just like in like an uneducated body of legislators like we have, it's just particularly problematic that there's lots.
He's just a simple
I've
Marine.
sat through so many things there that are like this, like where there was a bill like a couple years ago. I can't remember. It was like where we were just like in Jude C, like waiting for something else, and it was about like you know criminalizing like if the person has overdosed and you were with the person who had overdosed and you did not call 911 or you did not wait for 911 to come and the person died.
Right.
And like very emotional testimony. And like I can only imagine if like my family member that had happened to. But the testimony was like, then it's like, of course, about your child who died and their friend who was with them. And so now we're like, and a lot of things have gone wrong here, right? I mean, like there's, drug dealers, there's this, like a lot of things have gone wrong. And now you've decided that really what we need to do is make sure that that friend who's also obviously has a drug addiction, that they go to jail.
That's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the whole point was about like people who are afraid to stay, that they will be thrown in jail, which is maybe a problem of criminalization. And of course, what are we doing? We're like, so there should be a crime that if you don't stay and somebody dies, then you go to jail. And I just remember sitting there, like, again, preparing to testify on something else, being like, man, I mean, like, I get the pain that these people are in, right? And like, you want to find a tangible person to blame, right?
Yeah.
And for there to be real consequences. And this goes along with what Dietz was saying about the women testifying about this. Like, they're in their trauma, right? But like, the law doesn't have a remedy for all of these things. It doesn't. And like creating criminalization so that then like another person who's like really just kind of caught up in all of this bad shit together, that like their life is also ruined. That's not a good solution here.
All right. Well, I just want to spend a minute talking about Representative Knox.
Yeah. Because this is just but one sort of example of extensive questioning on bills that he should be on our side about, and in ways that are kind of like bizarre and confusing and hostile. That's how I would describe it, maybe.
I'm not going to even go so far as to say that he should be on our side, but
well, he's a Democrat from New Orleans, so I don't really. I mean, he's not required to be. He's not obligated.
No,
to be. He's a Democrat from New Orleans.
Yeah, but I'm not even going to make that assumption. But there has been I mean, his party has generally kind of positions on a lot of these issues. He has had plenty of education from advocates who have reached out to him. He can take whatever fucking position he wants to on these issues. That is not my problem. My problem is, one, he doesn't have to fucking talk on every goddamn bill, especially when he obviously is just a simple fucking dude who doesn't have a fucking law degree, and he's sitting on a goddamn legal committee and he knows shit about shit, and he's obviously not listening to the fucking advocates who are trying to educate him about this, but he feels compelled to speak up and profess like his own feelings and thoughts and confusion and whatever. Yeah. Like that is just annoying the shit out of me. He just needs to shut the fuck up.
Particularly true because for the most part, he votes the right way. And what I mean by that is obviously, the way that we would expect or the way that Democrats are voting. So that is true for the most part. But but notwithstanding, he is like constantly in hearings like this, interjecting all sorts of like
stuff that is not helpful.
Well, it's not just confusing. Not helpful. Yeah. It's yes, exactly. Like lots of, I mean, his own committee members think he's doing this. There's no doubt. They're like trying to limit him talking.
If I was Representative Villio, I would just be like, I'm sorry. Representative Villio is the chair of the committee.
I think we go intense here.
If I were I'm not cutting this.
Go ahead.
I'm serious. If I was Representative Villio, I would create a mechanical problem with his microphone in that committee that sorry, but it's going to take us all session to fix this.
I just want to say that Rep. Knox is so bad at his job and obnoxious on this committee that Michelle and Rep. Villio are in agreement. Because she is constantly trying to silence him.
I'm incensed by him. Like literally the sound of his voice, it just fills me. I feel like, that scene, this is also a very dated reference, that scene in Clue where Mrs. White, Madeline Kahn, is like, flames, the flames.
I hated her so much flames on the side of my face, heaving breaths.
Like, oh my God,
He does it every fucking hearing that I've seen, and for all of the years he's been there.
Remember Representative Cox? It was an extra Representative Cox.
There's a new Cox on this committee too. So
but remember the old Rep Cox that every single time there was an abortion bill in committee, he would be like, he was a Vietnam veteran, and God bless him for his service. My dad is a Vietnam veteran, also a Marine. My dad is not nearly as dense as fucking Cox.
No, not at all.
Or Knox, sorry. Whatever. Either. Yeah, either. No, my dad is actually really smart, and he listens to this podcast, so he's going to get a little blush right now. But seriously, Representative Cox, every fucking hearing, I mean, he would have like a Walter from fucking Big Lebowski moment where he would be like, my, brothers didn't die face down in the muck to protect, the right to kill a fucking baby.
I was thinking of him earlier, actually, when I was talking about that these people are like, well, that can't be the law, or if that is the law, then I don't like it, so we're gonna just do whatever in this clubhouse. I was definitely thinking of, it's like Rep Cox, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the Constitution protects the right to dismember.
What you're saying is that I fought in and this is not his accent, but this is just my generic, like, dumbass Louisiana representative.
Oh, you're doing a Southern accent.
Yeah, I'm doing the Southern accent. I did not fight in Vietnam so that we could protect the right to have babies ripped apart, pulled out of their mama's womb.
That was the whole thing. It was in that hearing, and I was like, that's not what
No, it wasn't just in that hearing, Ellie. It was in a lot of them.
No, I know, I hear you. But
anyway, representatives with last names that end in OX are not good, not great, and should shut the fuck up.
Yeah, like, shut up, stop saying stupid things. We know how you're going to vote. Stop saying stupid things. Stop wasting time.
Shut the fuck up. And that's what we're going to do right now. Let's wrap it up. Okay. So if you live in Louisiana, we're going to put a link in the show notes, because you've got to send emails to your state senators. You've got to urge them to vote no on this HB 575.
It will be on the Senate floor
Tuesday.
This week. Well, we don't know
maybe
when, but
earliest
it will
Tuesday,
be
we think.
It will be this week. We can know that.
Okay. And as a reminder, we have a law school project for folks that are listening. In the comments, don't fucking cheat. We'll know it. And then obviously
I just want people to actually go through the exercise of just trying to reconcile the like, just what would one document look like?
You don't
even have to fucking tell me what you think it says. Just like go through the process of like, transferring. Okay, so if I insert this word here and then delete that word there, and then just do that. That's a good enough exercise in insanity. And then time yourself. See if you can do it within like about 15 minutes while you're also trying to listen to like something very, very important that you'll not only have to be able to retain but respond to. Yeah, do that.
Mm-hmm. All right, what else do people need to do before we
rate, review, and
subscribe.
And also prescribe.
All right, we'll talk to y'all next week. Seriously is presented by Lift Louisiana, a nonprofit organization advocating for reproductive health rights and justice.